Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Film by Request. This is something I love that we've been getting to do lately for our Patreon subscribers. If you're watching this, yes, watching it, then you are a part of our Patreon family, and for that, we thank you. Andrew, it's kind of cool. Like the Patreon subscribers. At a certain tier, they get this fun thing where they can choose whatever movie. Doesn't matter, TV show, movie, soundtrack. We've done a lot of stuff. I was asked the question. We've got several people to choose from on the team. Who do you want to listen to? And I was so happy to hear Eric Dearth say, well, kind of want to, I'm the guy, So I was like, okay, this is awesome. And, normally I might be a little concerned, but Eric has been on, he's been on the show before. Earlier this year, Eric, you and I did Collateral, Michael Mann's Collateral.
Yes, we did. That was a great episode. I had so much fun doing that.
Yeah, it was a great time. That kind of came from Docking Bay 77, where Eric has been on several episodes. He and Dayton and I had this fun little thing at April Fool's. We kind of took over each other's pods. We didn't know what we were going to talk about, so I actually hosted a Docking Bay 77 episode with Eric and Liam Lewis over there, and we had a lot of fun. And after that, I was like, hey, Eric, you ever want to come over and do an episode with us? Name it, say it. And he was like, yeah, Michael Mann. I was like, oh, okay. Consider it done. And then Eric joins our Patreon, immediately goes for the tier so that he can get his own episode. And I was like, hey, Eric, what do you want to do? And he says, let's do The Martian. So, I was like, okay, so Eric, the first question I got for you, because you could have picked anything. So what brings us to The Martian today?
It's been one of my all-time favorite films. With a few little exceptions, I love the science of it, but I love the heart of it. It is both a man versus nature and a man versus man film. And I do love the sci-fi genre. I don't know what exactly draws me to this, but it is one of my all-time go-to favorite sci-fi movies.
Andrew, we got to take a moment, and I'm glad that we're doing a video episode because I expected Eric to have like a really kick-ass background because he does great with this kind of stuff. You know that.
Yeah.
But check out his jacket, Andrew.
I'm a little jealous. I was going through my head. I got a flight suit that I think matches his jacket. I got a black jacket that matches it. I have an I Am Team Artemis shirt, but I was like, no, let's be a little more subdued today. And now I'm incredibly jealous because, the man rocks it.
He's wearing like a legitimate NASA jacket. It's unbelievably cool. I absolutely love it. He's even got the Watney name patch. So Eric, from Collateral, when you showed up looking like Vincent in the back of the car, I knew that you were coming with something correct. So hats off to you, sir. I appreciate it. I dig this, man.
I didn't know we were going to be video recording, but I actually have more.
Well, and not to be outdone, Andrew is in what might be one of the most authentic looking rooms in Cleveland, Ohio. So I don't know what kind of CGI magic you did. Since you're clearly on a shuttle somewhere, right?
I opted for realism in that I'm barely surviving. I'm in a space where I accidentally almost blew myself up. So if I turn the camera around, you would see just debris and tools and everything as I'm trying to rebuild my shelter.
Just hanging on.
I went for the real experience, the Watney experience here.
Well, I'm glad that you guys are up for the Watney experience because, as I said, it's Patreon, so we don't have to necessarily hold ourselves to the rules of our normal format. And given what this movie is all about, reacting to disaster, thinking quick on your feet. I thought I'm going to throw the outline out, and I've got a completely different outline, which is basically a series of questions. I want to get into it. I'm gonna interview you guys more or less, because let's be honest, if anyone could handle this, if anyone could science the shit out of a podcast like this, it's you two, because both of you, correct me if I'm wrong, both of you have been to space camp, correct?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
I
Good
went.
times.
Oh, you got me beat. I went the year after the Challenger explosion.
Oh, well, you got me beat on time. I went for the first time around, I think, 2012, 2013, and then I just went again actually a few years ago.
I would love to go back to adult space camp. I was a kid. I was in high school.
It's so much fun as an adult. I'm not going to lie.
Okay. Well, Eric, real quick, space camp. You go to space camp, 1987, right? Am I right about the year? Because Challenger.
Yeah, it was 1987.
Was it a somber experience? Was everything back to normal at space camp a year later, or are they still feeling the heartache? Are they still feeling the effects?
Well, everybody felt.
You're probably too young to know, right? But looking back, what do you think?
Well, I mean, everybody did feel it. There was definitely sort of a tension in the air, but I think it reinvigorated the whole quest to look beyond the stars. The movie Space Camp, I think there was a movie that had come out, and my trip there was right after that movie, and there's a scene where one of the protagonists is in the zero-G spinning vortex, and the guy is there to help her along. He was actually a real counselor at Space Camp, and I met him, and the whole machine is really fake. You have no control over it. You have a stick that you're trying to, manipulate. It's all fake. They're just spinning you around. But the simulators, the shuttle simulators, the launch control room, the flight control room. I mean, for a summer camp, it was well done. But we went on a lot of field trips. We got to see the neutral buoyancy tank, or one of them. I don't know if it was the full-sized one, but we got to see a lot of stuff, and it was great. But there didn't seem to be this somberness in the air. Everybody was really excited to be there. They loved what they were doing, and I had an incredible time, and I would love to go back in as an adult.
All right. On that note, Andrew, who had a better time at space camp? Was it the young Andrew or the older Andrew?
Honestly, I loved it both. The first time I went was actually, there weren't a lot of other campers there. I think there's maybe all told 20 of us. Which gave it a really tight-knit feel. It was really fun, and I feel like, I don't know if it's painting with rose-colored glasses or whatnot, but I remember everything just being much more vibrant. Like the shuttle that they have on display there, it was amazing. The second time I went as an adult, they had actually taken it down for refurbishment. So it had a little bit more of like a peek behind the curtains view the second time. But I mean, I was hanging out with other adults. There's a hotel right next door that has a bar, so I could drink with my counselor. That's not something you can do at regular space camp. But I mean, it was just a bunch of other adults that we're all nerds. We all really wanted to do that as kids, and we got to let that inner child out. And like, how can you not participate in that? How can you not love that?
Well, Andrew, we covered Space Camp on our limited 1986 series. So you know how much I love that movie. You know how much of a fan I am of Space Camp. So it goes without saying how much I envy the both of you for going. Maybe one day, by where I'm heading, like maybe senior Space Camp if they have something like that, by the time I hit my 50s, yeah.
we can set up a guys trip. We'll all go together.
I'm in. Eric,
Andrew,
you go again, right?
Andrew, how old were you when you went the first time?
They were both adult space camp, but the first time I was 24.
Okay, so things might have been a little very different. I'm sure it has been expanded. We were in a warehouse, and we had the cockpit simulator, And we also had the Space Lab simulator with bunks and beds. And I remember at night, sometimes I couldn't sleep because a lot of these kids were snoring like mad, and I would just sneak out and go actually sleep in the simulator.
Yeah, that hasn't changed. They still sleep in the labs. That they have added an International Space Station, so you can, and then they added the Orion.
Okay.
So there's more simulators beyond just the shuttle, but the shuttle's still there. You still stay in the labs. A lot of the adults opt to go stay at the hotel nearby because they're child bunk beds, but it's part of the experience. It's fun.
Yeah, I'd do it again.
So to clarify, Andrew's first time, he's Tate Donovan, space, like like the movie. Second time around, he's more Tom Skerritt. So good stuff.
I'm actually okay with that. Yeah, it's fine.
That's a compliment on either end, by the way.
Yeah.
You guys went to space camp, but I got to hang out with someone from the movie Space Camp. I got to meet Tate Donovan a couple, what was it, 2 years ago? So fantastic guy, by the way. Everyone's there to talk about Hercules and Friends and pretty much anything but Space Camp. I'm the one guy that wants to talk about Space Camp, and that kind of lit him up. He's like, "Hey, all right, let's talk." So, all right, let's talk about The Martian. It is celebrating its 10th anniversary. Just this past a couple weeks ago, officially 10 years old. I definitely want to talk about how this movie's aged, but before we get into that, let's talk about Ridley Scott. My first question to the both of you. Let's talk Ridley Scott in the 21st century. Gladiator, Black Hawk Down, Kingdom of Heaven, American Gangster, Prometheus, Covenant, Napoleon, Gladiator 2. All right. All these are 21st century Ridley Scott movies. My question, Eric, is The Martian the best Ridley Scott film in the 21st century?
Wow. If I had to judge them between three films, Prometheus,
Okay.
Covenant, and The Martian, I would definitely say The Martian.
I would hope so. But how's something, Andrew? How's something like the Martian? How does it stack up against something like Gladiator or Kingdom of Heaven, like his other major works?
Gladiator is going to be a hard one to top for sure. And as we've talked about, I have a soft spot for NASA movies, for space movies. This is a sci-fi version of Apollo 13, as far as I'm concerned, which is another one of my favorites. So I don't know. I think one of the things that I love about this movie that might set it above those others, the human element Eric was talking about earlier, is it really connects with people, and it really grabs at your like that survival instinct, that love for life, but also it's really funny, and that's a hard line to walk. It's one of the reasons I think Andy Weir as a writer is so great. I've read some of his other books as well, and they have all this heart and they have all this character, but they're really funny, and you don't get that in a lot of his other works. So if you can marry those two things, this big grand scale and also genuine laughs, that might take it.
You bring up the comedy, and I do want to talk a little bit about that later on. But Eric, you read this book as well, right?
I read it when it first came out. I actually read it immediately after I saw the film. It's been a while, but I do remember there was a lot more science in the book, and there was a lot more profanity in the book.
Yeah,
okay. A lot more profanity in the book. Yep. But I think that Ridley Scott did a really good job, along with the screenwriter, to adapt that comedy from the book in different ways. Because one of the big things that's, to me, different about the book, and I think other people will agree with this, is the vlog, the video log.
Yep.
You had to be able to capture Matt Damon's essence, and you had to see him. You couldn't just see him typing on a screen or writing in a journal. And the comedy that he brings to that in that vlog, I think, was different than the book, but it honored the book.
Okay. You say it honored the book, but would you say Ridley has done a really good film adaptation when it comes to The Martian? From novel to film, is this one of those where you say, hey, yeah, he nailed it. He got it? or
Yes.
is it? Or yeah, okay. Andrew, would you concur?
Yeah, a lot of times I want faithful adaptations. I know that that's a very a very divisive topic for people, but this particular book, it would be impossible to do straight because it's largely written through Watney's notes, his diary, so to speak, his entry communications, that sort of thing. That's terrible TV. We don't want to watch that.
Yeah.
So the way that they've chosen to adapt it, the way they've chosen to gloss over the very dense amount of science. I mean, it's a lot of science in this book. And just
I
kind of
mean, there were
gloss
like
over
3
that
pages about sugar calorie content.
exactly, just prepping for the bomb and stuff. It's crazy. So it would have been impossible to translate it directly. And I think the way they did it captured the spirit of it and captured what made it great while also doing its own thing. And I love it.
Well, Eric was talking about. He was just now talking about Matt Damon and his performance and how comedic it is. I'll be honest. This is without doubt got to be my favorite Matt Damon film performance out of all his stuff. How do you guys think of when you're looking at Matt Damon and his work? You know, Will Hunting or Jason Bourne or any of the many other roles that he's done. How does this one stack up to some of his other more iconic roles?
And Good Will Hunting is an amazing movie. I mean, it genuinely, every time I watch it, I'm like, I didn't think it could be as good as I remembered, and I watch it, and it is that good. But I think there's a lot more nuance in this performance. I think there's a lot more layers to it, and then to carry the humor with that, I think you might be right. This may be his best performance.
Eric, he is on set with the entire cast. They shoot for a couple weeks, right? And then they all leave. And the next 5 weeks, it's him by himself. When you think about that, like, well, let's talk about his performance a little bit. I mean, he's basically acting alone. This is like a Castaway situation, right? Is this one of his better performances?
Oh yes, I agree. And to go back to what Andrew said, with Good Will Hunting, he was a relatively unknown at the time. He was coming out with Ben Affleck, and they did win the Oscar for that screenplay, but as a relatively unknown actor, he stood his ground with Robin Williams. And that is not an easy thing to do if you're a newbie in the business, and he stood his ground with Robin Williams. But I agree. I think this is probably one of his best, if not the best, performances of Matt Damon.
Well, he's playing Mark Watney, and I can't think of any two guys that I can talk to that would know better. My question, and Andrew, let's start with you. Is Mark Watney, is he a realistic portrayal of an astronaut, a botanist, a scientist?
Well, I won't speak to botanists. I don't know many botanists, but I'm a big fan of early days of NASA. The Mercury, the Gemini, and the Apollo missions. And the face that the astronauts put on for the world is one thing, these brave heroes and whatnot. But a lot of them were really funny, and they had a really good sense of humor. They would play pranks on each other all the time. They swore like sailors. I mean, these were military guys, but when it really came down to it, they knew their stuff. They knew their shit backwards and forwards. They knew every piece of equipment and what it was capable of and the science behind it. So I think that, this is an extremely accurate representation. And that's what I love about it. I don't like when they get over glorified to be these, robotic supermen, but I also don't like when they're played to be kind of dumb. He was a human being. He was funny. I loved his and Martinez rapport. And I think that feels very natural, but at the same time, he knew his shit.
Eric, you were talking about the book and remembering that there's a lot of science in it, right? Is there how do you feel about the balance in this film, science versus entertainment? Did Ridley get it right? I mean, is there not enough science? Is there too much science? What's your take?
No,
on it?
I don't think I don't think there's too much science. I'm really tired of filmmakers trying to dumb movies down to the lowest common denominator of viewer, you really have to engage an audience, and I think Ridley Scott did a good job with that. I had some problems with a lot of the science, but then I did some of my own research and found that most of those were actually legitimate and reasonable courses for Mark Watney to take. The only issue I really had with the science was that giant windstorm at the beginning. I mean, there's not enough atmosphere on Mars to generate that kind of force and create that kind of destruction, but you just have to have suspension of disbelief and go with it. And even Andy Weir in the commentary said, I had to figure out a way to make this happen, and I knew what I was writing might not be technically accurate, but he said, fuck it, it has to be that way.
Well, it's funny you mention it, because Ridley was like, look, we get it. That storm, I think he said something along the lines of in reality that storm would almost be enough to mess up your hair, like a gust of wind to mess up your hair.
Yeah.
And not what we see, this catastrophic thing. But it's Hollywood, it's entertainment. We need
right.
A dangerous, scary storm on Mars. Otherwise, what's the point, right? So I don't know. I'm with you. I think, it's you got to suspend your disbelief a little bit, but I don't know. For me, someone like me, like some of the science, I'm like, what the hell did he just say? But I feel like it's toned down enough that you can understand it. Well, like his whole communication piece, like with using the rover and all the signs and pointing the
hexadecimal.
Yeah, the hexadecimal.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And they didn't do it like Star Trek with technobabble. That was one of the great things about it. They didn't do it like Star Trek. They didn't have to explain the science. You just believed that this guy knew what he was doing, and he even made mistakes. He blew himself up.
Yeah.
So I felt that the science held up.
At that moment, you talk about him blowing himself up when he's first trying to figure out, he's trying to get the farm going. I love that moment because he has that brief celebration that's cut short when he does blow himself back 20 feet. I think that kind of stuff's fantastic. Andrew, is it true? Or Eric, you might know. Both of you, like I said, you're the experts. My understanding is that Ridley got a lot of help from NASA, as far as getting things right. Aside from the storm, I know he was kind of apologetic about the storm. Like, hey, we got to get there, right? But as far as Eric mentioned, there's no Star Trek technobabble. They're using real terminology, and my understanding is that NASA was pretty helpful with this.
Yeah, NASA, a lot like when they do a military movie and the military will weigh in. This was great PR for NASA. I mean, they're the heroes here. So yeah, they wanted to weigh in. They wanted to help get it right. The book, Andy Weir took a lot of time and energy to get the science right. And that plays out. I just recently read Artemis, which is a book he wrote about a moon base. And again, a lot of the science isn't real because we don't have a moon base, but a lot of his thought processes were, what would really happen? What would the economy look like here? What would crime look like on a moon base? That was and he built everything from there. So going into it with that mindset, NASA actually really liked the book. And I think they wanted to get this through. Plus, who wouldn't want to work with Ridley Scott? If you're a nerd working at NASA and Ridley Scott comes to you and says, hey, can I get some feedback? Of course you're going to say yes.
Yeah. Well, I had heard that when he was initially writing the book, because he had released it in segments to the public before it became a big deal, Andy Weir did not get a whole lot of cooperation from NASA in the beginning until the book took off. And then the floodgates opened, and that just left him wide open to a whole bunch of opportunities he wouldn't have otherwise had.
Well, yeah, I mean, you show up on NASA's door, hey, I'm writing a book. They're going to be like, scram. But then you write the book without them to the best of your ability. It's a hit. They're opening the door then. They're like, hey, how can we help make a movie? Let's
the book was almost like Tom Clancy on Mars.
Okay. I'm a Tom Clancy guy, so I have not read The Martian, but everything you guys are telling me so far makes me want to order it as soon as we're done recording here. So
Yeah, and it was one of those books that like, I generally like to see the movie before I read the book because I'm usually disappointed the other way around. I don't think that that necessarily holds true here because they are so different. Like functionally, they have to be. But this book and this movie like really go well together because a lot of the science would be awful on screen. It would be boring and it would be dry. But when you've watched the movie and then you read the book, or vice versa, you're getting a lot more background. You're seeing what Mark is doing and you're understanding why he's doing it, the science behind it that they don't cover because pacing issues and whatnot. But you start to actually learn about the science behind it. It's like a companion piece, like a compendium, like here's what's actually going on behind the scenes. And there's obviously a lot more in scenes that are taken out, etc. But I love them together. I think it's a great, great duo.
Eric, is this film, and I need you to be point blank with me here. Is this film a drama, a dramatic, space exploration, type of film, or is it a comedy? If you're walking into the video store, and I know we don't have video, this movie takes place in the future, and even now we don't have video stores. But if you were walking, if you're streaming and you're pulling up the tiles. Are you expecting The Martian to be in the comedy tile? Or are you expecting it to be in the sci-fi tile or the drama tile? Where does this one belong?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because when I first heard of it, I never saw it when it came out in the theater. I didn't even know what it was about. I heard these little clippings on the radio, Matt Damon is the Martian. And I was like, okay, what's this all about? And it actually wasn't until I was at a store, and it might have been Best Buy, the DVD had just come out and they were playing the trailer for it on all the big TVs in the background. And I was like, wow, how did I miss this? So I immediately went and bought it. I watched it. Then I went and read the book. And I have to say, I think it's a dramedy.
Well, okay, but Andrew, even when I don't have the voice of reason,
Jeff didn't like my answer, I don't think.
even when I don't have the voice of reason, Amber Lewis or Scott Hoffman here to answer option C when I only give A or B.
All right. I will
still someone.
I will give you A or B.
Yeah,
it's a drama.
Okay, it's a drama. Andrew, is it a drama? Is it a comedy?
Yeah, I 100% agree with him. I think this is a survival story a la Alive. It's about man versus nature and the will to survive. The comedy is, I think, an element of a good drama that often gets left out. Real life can be funny. Real life can have, good timing or, snappy editing. But like at its heart, this is a survival story. So it's absolutely a drama.
I pushed you both to answer. Put a foot in one camp or the other, because let's not forget the controversy with this film, the Golden Globes. So it is nominated and wins Best Picture in a comedy or musical. And this had a lot of people in the industry lose their minds because they were pissed. So much so that the Golden Globes had to change their submission rules, So now it's, they had to clarify that dramas with comedic overtones should be entered as dramas. Because this one kind of snuck in the back door. Even, I think it was Judd Apatow who was kind of calling out and like, look, you took this category because you didn't want to go up against the real heavy hitters in the drama category. And I'm not saying who knows? It's not like Matt Damon or Ridley Scott are out there going, "Hey, this is where we want. We're funny guys. Let's be this." But
if I recall, this
comedy.
This wasn't the first time that the Golden Globes awarded a film as a best comedy or musical that clearly wasn't.
Well, again, to your point, Eric, it happened enough that The Martian was the straw that broke the camel's back, and they said, all right, no more. Like, we're changing the rules. And I bring it all up to ask you this. This is a very high stakes story. Andrew called it's a survival drama. but it needs this kind of humor, right?
Yeah,
Otherwise, it's just a harrowing,
fundamental.
Yeah. I feel like if the comedy wasn't in this movie, I would watch it, I would enjoy it, but I would be emotionally and mentally drained, right? You
Yeah.
need his lightheartedness to keep you up, to keep you going. Like early on, they're like, when they find out he's still alive, and they're like, what could possibly be going through his mind? Think about where he's at. And then we smash cut to Damon, and he's bitching about the music selection. All the disco, that he's just sick of hearing disco.
And that was a great comedic running gag throughout the whole film.
Throughout the one thread of him just bitching about disco, and I'm with him because I can't stand disco music. So every time he's bitching about it, I'm loving it. I'm having a fun. I'm laughing because I know if I'm Matt Damon in this situation, I am tortured, not by the hunger or the isolation. I'm tortured by the fact that the only music I can listen to is disco. So I'm with him on that. Absolutely.
And he's got like every episode of Happy Day.
Yeah. Clearly, that's if that's not a nod to Ron Howard in Apollo 13, I don't know what is. Honestly, that's got to be.
It's the humor in this also, so much of it comes from the editing of the way they'll chop things together, and I think that it's such a great way of showing what it takes to survive in a situation. They sort of sum up the dealing with the life or death situation, just dealing with one thing at a time, and finding humor in that is part of surviving. I mentioned Alive earlier. I love survival stories.
So
I've read several, and every time there's always a huge element of what these people did to maintain their sanity. And even in Alive, at one point after the avalanche, if you recall the movie, it's a very devastating moment. Mm-hmm. Several people died. Not long before they're rescued, somebody had taken a fire extinguisher and started blasting it and scared people, thinking there was never another avalanche coming. That's hilarious and also incredibly, incredibly bleak. So I think humor in a survival story or humor in something like this makes it more real. And that crossover of genres is what elevates it beyond, like, there's so many good drama movies, but you never want to watch them again. And there's so many good humorous movies that are just silly and lighthearted fun. This found a way to take the best of both worlds and put them together. That's why I've watched this movie a bunch of times, and I'll do it again.
What is it about this movie? And maybe it's the comedy, Eric. What is it about this movie? I can't, like Andrew said, I can watch this over and over again. But something like Tom Hanks in Castaway, which is also a incredible film, a brilliant piece of cinema, but it's a little more downhearted. Like Chuck Nolan is we basically watch him go insane slowly, but we don't see that with Matt Damon, with Mark Watney. What's the difference between Watney and Nolan and their approach to this isolation, do you think?
I think first and foremost, it's probably training that NASA astronauts are trained to deal with these sorts of situations. And it harkens back to the end of the film when someone in his class says, "Did you think you were going to die?" And he said, "Yes." And he said, "But you solve a problem. And you solve one problem, and then you solve another problem. And then you solve another problem, and if you solve enough problems, you get to go home." And I think it was that Mark Watney not only had the training, but he also had the resources available to him that Tom Hanks did not have on the island.
Okay.
I never expected Mark Watney to befriend volleyball in The Martian.
Okay.
He did sort of keep Pathfinder as a pet.
He did. At the very end, he gave him a little loving tap on the head. I will give you that.
I mean, if you think about it, there's not much difference between having long, detailed conversations with a volleyball so much as staring at a computer screen and talking and doing a vlog, right? There's not. But
the difference is that the difference is that Mark knew that somewhere, somehow, on the other side of that conversation was actually a human being that one day would hear him. Whereas if you talk to a volleyball, no one's ever going to hear that but you.
Okay, and would that give credence to his optimism, do you think?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And I also think that the difference between Castaway and The Martian is the tone of the plot. The Castaway had a much more hopeless feel to it, whereas The Martian had a much more hopeful feel to it.
Okay. Andrew, I think we've got to acknowledge some of the unbelievable supporting cast in this film, and we could do a whole hour, 2 hours. I'm sure we're not going to, but Eric gets a little extra time to think about an answer. But when we talk about this cast, who shines the most for you? Who is real? Like, if Mark Watney is not on screen, who is it that you want to see on screen?
Ooh, it's like you said, it's a stellar cast. But there's two answers for me, and in my opinion, these are two people that steal anything they're in. And the first of which is Michael Pena as Martinez. Much like Watney, he carries so much like emotional weight, but also he can be really funny. Sometimes he can do both at the same time. You're just rooting for the guy. You love the guy. But the other one, and he does not get enough screen time, is Donald Glover as Rich Purnell. He's
call.
so good. And I get the character doesn't need to be on screen a lot, but he's the hero of the story. He really does save Watney. He's interesting. He's funny. His comedic timing is off the charts. Even the scene where he slips on some papers as he's very scatterbrained. He wipes out. That was not planned, but Donald Glover, being the amazing actor that he is, the amazing comedian that he is, pops up and just keeps right on going. And I love that they left that in. He's engaging whatever he's in.
Yeah. I half expect you to say Sebastian Stan just because he's the Winter Soldier. So you're showing a lot of emotional
the entire
depth here
crew
right
is
now.
Marvel. The entire crew is Marvel.
True.
You know,
you got a Marvel
Kate Mara
shuttle
was the
there.
Invisible Woman. Michael Pena's an Ant-Man.
Yeah.
Even Jessica Chastain was in one of the terrible X-Men movies. So
Yeah, you're right. Eric, who, in your opinion, Andrew brings up some great performances here. Who shines the most for you?
Well, I could be cliched and say that Matt Damon, but I mean, I think he does do an excellent job. But I have to agree with Andrew. Donald Glover as Rich Purnell, the steely-eyed missile man, even though he's briefly in the film, he brings such a great performance to the short time that he's there. And one of the other scenes I loved was when he drank from that spoiled coffee cup and then spit it into a trash can full of holes.
Yeah.
It was a vented trash can. That was awesome. But if I had to pick a second one, I'm going to go with Sean Bean, because Sean Bean was the voice of humanity at NASA.
Good point. Very good point.
He was the voice of humanity. He was the one that argued, hey, we have to tell the crew. Hey, we have to look out for the well-being of these people. They're human beings. And Sean Bean was the voice of humanity in the film. And also, it's, I think, maybe the only movie other than National Treasure that he didn't die in.
Sean Bean survives The Martian, which I'm happy about. And I'll tell you another Sean Bean thing I'm happy about.
And the whole
Project
thing
Elrond.
about the Council of Elrond.
Yeah.
So
How
good.
much are you guys loving that he is the one that gets to explain the Council of Elrond?
And that was in the book, and Andy Weir didn't plan it that way, but that little comment about the Council of Elrond, it was in the book.
Okay.
Nice
It's
little
so
meta
good, too.
moment.
Yeah, because like they don't put a hat on it. Like if you didn't know, if you weren't a Lord of the Rings guy, there was no like looking at the camera and winking. It feels very natural. But if you are a nerd like us, then you're like, I love it.
Yeah, because
And then Jeff Daniels says, "I'd be Glorfindel."
Yeah. Yeah, we get some fun little nods. Like I love when Kate Mara, when she's prepping the guy, she says, "Remember, in space," and she just trails off because we know no one can hear you scream, and I love that it's a Ridley Scott movie and they're dropping something like that in. I don't know if it's in the book, but I that's another little Easter egg that I think that's fun for the cinema files.
Yeah, I want to go back to Sean Bean for a second though, because this
Yeah.
is one of my minor complaints about this movie and its realism. So he was the flight director for the mission, and flight directors or missions will have multiple flight directors because obviously people need to sleep. But one of my absolute favorite books of all time is called Flight. It's the autobiography of Chris Kraft, who basically established what the flight director is. He was flight director for all of Mercury and a good chunk of Gemini before he got promoted. Flight is God. When you are the flight director for a mission, nobody can override you, not even the director of NASA. That is a rule they put in place very, very early on. You make the decision of what's best. They can fire you once the mission's back. If you make a decision they don't like, they can kick you out, but only after the mission is over. If you are flight, you are God. So the idea that he said, we're going to do this, and the director of NASA overrode him, is not, at least at present, how we operate. And so I was a little frustrated with that, because if he said, we're going to tell the crew, that's my call, he shouldn't have had to argue that with anybody.
Okay. Because I know there's a little bit of clash between him and Jeff Daniels, and even there's a moment where Jeff Daniels is like, "Hey, when this is all over, I'll expect your resignation." You know?
Yeah, and that is a nod to what I was talking about, because you can't really fire flight in the middle of a mission. Like, it's not really an option. So once it's over, once they're back, then I'll expect your resignation, because you did cross that line. So in crossing that line, when he sent the Purnell plan, Jeff, being the resident non-space nerd here, do you know what they meant when they said Rich Purnell is a steely-eyed missile man?
I had no idea. I'm like the other character. Like, who's Rich Purnell?
Eric, are you familiar with that phrase outside of the context of the movie?
It goes back to the early days of NASA with, I think it was a command, switch to aux.
Yeah, SEC to aux. So on Apollo 12, the ship was hit by lightning during takeoff, and everything was going to hell. They were about to abort. It looked like everything was failing. And there was a man who just said, actually, I'm familiar with this. You just need to switch SEC to aux. And they're like, nobody else had any idea what was going on. But in this amazing catastrophic moment, he realized it was just a real quick switching flip, and everything was fine again. And so they called him a steely-eyed missile man. So that phrase now carries the term of being able to fix a problem, being cool-headed in an emergency, and saving everything.
Wow. Okay. Well, as I settle in with becoming Jeff Daniels more and more on this podcast, let me ask. You guys mentioned a couple. We've kind of tiptoed around some fun scenes, some dramatic scenes. Eric, is there a favorite scene for you, or possibly one you believe is the pivotal moment in this film? Or could you give me one of each?
There are so many to choose from, but I think one of my favorite scenes, and this also goes back to one of my favorite directorial choices by Ridley Scott, is the music, especially after he picks up the nuclear generator and he's driving home and he's listening to Hot Stuff. And he's doing that little dance in the Rover. I love that. As far as a pivotal scene, I think it would have to be when the Hab loses its airlock and he loses all of his potatoes. And now he is right back to square one after he thought, fuck you, Mars.
Yeah.
And Mars showed him, fuck you, Mark Watney. I do have some questions about that. Maybe Andrew can answer this. Why couldn't he have just started over? Why couldn't he have just brought more soil in? He has been pooping all of this time. He would have had waste. He still had viable potatoes. He could have recreated the water environment. What prevented him from just starting over?
So I'm not a botanist, so take this with a huge grain of salt. But as I understand, he did not have anywhere near enough excrement. He had been using the stuff he already had been wasting, and so once all of that froze, all the bacteria in it died.
Okay,
there's really no way to make more. I mean, by the time he would have pooped enough to start over,
he'd have started.
Yeah, he had
anyway.
like a crew of 6, like
right. Okay,
for a while.
Like almost a year's worth of poop from 6 people. So yeah, my answer, also not a botanist, but I would say something science. would be how I explain that
It's
one.
I trust Andy Weir that the science checks out. You know what I mean?
Well, okay, so Andrew, your thoughts? One of your favorite scenes?
One of my favorite scenes is when he establishes through the rover actual contact, like where they can message back and forth. And obviously the messages are very simple. The conversation is very simple because it's a 24-minute round trip, I think, conversation. But there's so much, again, the thing I love about this, there's so much drama and humor, rapid fire. You can see the relief on his face and his message of, thanks, really looking forward to not dying. And like the relief that washes over everybody and the tears on his face. And as that conversation progresses, and this is to Eric's point earlier, the book has a lot of swearing. I mean, I think he says fuck in literally the first sentence of the book. But they, managed to make this PG-13. So I love the way that they edit this, where it's like, it's outside of the rover when he's just cussing up a storm, or when they're reading the messages and they say the F word in Jared form. F word. There's so much humor to that. And especially when, Victor Kapoor responds, the whole world is watching, careful what you say. And he's just so angry and he lets it out. And, in the book, I like that they didn't say it. I think it's really funny in the movie. So if you like that scene, if you like the humor, plug your ears. But in the book, what he responds with is, this is a picture of boobs. And then he does the like parentheses, period, Y, period, parentheses, knowing that is going to be sent out to the world. And I just think that's hilarious. It's so immature. And it's this guy that's, just who gives a shit? What does he have to lose?
Can I share with you guys one of my favorite scenes? And
please
ironically, or maybe not ironically, it is one of the most non-NASA moments in the film. Something I appreciate, and you typically see this in action movies, especially 80s action movies. I love when he comes to, and systems are critical. He's been more or less impaled by the apparatus, and he gets inside, and we get this moment where he has to perform surgery on himself. And then dish, kind of scoop the chunk, the metallic chunk out of his abdomen. Not since John Rambo sewing his arm up from the cliff fall through the tree has there been a more badass example of this, in my opinion. I just love. I mean, the beads of sweat. Damon is doing some of his best work here, I think, because he is grimacing in pain. He's sweating bullets. He's trembling. And he's trying to hold it together. And I'm thinking, who has it in him to do something like that? Because it's bad enough when you see scenes in this. Movie scenes like this where someone's trying to dig the bullet out or do something to help somebody. To do it to yourself, though, I love that moment. It's such a tough moment for the character, and I'm all in on Mark Watney from that moment. All in.
Hey, I'm tense. That whole scene, I'm just like, oh god. So it's very well done. Yeah.
Walk us through this scene. Like, what's going on in his mind? Could someone actually do this?
Yes. Adrenaline is a powerful force. The first thing you see him do is take assessment of the situation, and he doesn't just tear his clothes off. He meticulously cuts them off with trauma shears. Okay. And then removes the object, which I'm so glad that he didn't just do randomly and bled to death on the Martian surface. But then you'll notice he takes a small object and around in a circle. That would most likely be a local anesthetic and an antibiotic.
Okay.
And then he took a pair of forceps with a rounded tip that are typically used to hold what we call sponges or lap sponges, and used those to prop open the incision, and then used another forceps to go in and find the piece. Now, even though he put local anesthetic in his skin, that's still going to hurt. And then he pulled out the piece, and he had the wherewithal to take the end of the antenna and match it up to itself to make sure that he didn't leave a piece in his body. And then he used an Ethicon skin stapler, which I use twice a week.
Unreal. I mean, he's basically playing the board game Operation on himself. You know, use
Yes,
the
but his
forceps,
red
don't touch
light,
the side.
his nose didn't light up.
His nose did not light out. You probably are not going to win Operation against Mark Watney, probably. But Eric, you're saying the adrenaline's pumping. Someone can do this.
Yes,
this is
and he had a
realistic
mirror
moment.
as well. If you notice in the background, he had a mirror that was focused on his abdomen, so he could watch what he was doing, but everything would be backwards, which sometimes happens if you're doing an endoscopic procedure. You're looking at a screen and everything is backwards, so left is right, right is left. But yeah, I think this was not a life or death situation. This was. I think he did it because he needed to and because the adrenaline was flowing and he had the wherewithal to do all the steps needed that he had to. And then later on, he popped a staple, which was great because that happens.
Yeah, he's talking on the vlog. He's like, pop the staple.
Yep.
And he kind of winces.
Ugh.
So you said not life-threatening, but like he's gonna, if he doesn't do this surgery, he's gonna die probably in a couple weeks if he leaves the chunk in there.
Oh, yeah, you'll get massive sepsis. You'll get a huge infection. The human body does not like foreign objects left in it unless they are extremely surgically sterilized.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I don't
he
have-
would have died of probably sepsis in 2 weeks.
All right. If I'm in a survival situation, I'm trapped in my apartment. I don't have local antiseptic, Eric, but I do have several bottles of Makers and Jameson. So I could probably substitute something, right? I could figure this out.
Yeah, maybe grab some like 180 proof Everclear and then pour it in your belly and then take a swig or two of it.
Okay. All right.
And this is not real medical advice. Anyone listening on Patreon, this is for entertainment purposes only, and I do not suggest that you try to sew yourself up with Everclear. Please go to the nearest emergency room and seek medical help quickly and dial 911.
To be fair, I did say
that. I was starting to sweat.
to be fair, I did say survival situation, hypothetical survival. I did say I was trapped. So
all right. Fair enough. I just don't want to get sued.
Yeah. All right. Eric, you're off the hook. I promise you. But I'll tell you what. This movie, and I know we talked about this at the top of the hour, but Eric, I'll ask you first. Andrew, I want you to weigh in. If you take a lot of this comedy out, well, not even the comedy, the optimism, because you can have plenty of comedy in a tragic movie or a dark film, but does this movie work without the optimism? Because I feel like it's a very optimistic movie. His mindset is always like up here, right? He's like Eric said. You work the problem. He's never in a woe is me. He's never in a I'm gonna die up here. He doesn't have his dark moment like Hanks did in Castaway. Does this movie work without all the optimism though?
I'll weigh in here. No, that's what makes this movie special. That's what makes it unique. I think I wouldn't call it optimism though. I think I would call it maybe practicality, maybe mindfulness, maybe stoicism, because he's never like. I don't think optimism implies he's like this is all going to work out, and he knows the situation. He has accurately assessed the situation, and he's pretty much fucked. But he's going to keep working the problem, and I think that's what mindfulness teaches you is just don't spiral, don't predict the future, just work with what you got in front of you and focus on that problem. And the book, I think, goes into that mindset even more because he keeps running into obstacles. The hab breaking is only part of it. At one point the rover flips over, at another point he loses contact with NASA, and every single time it's not I'm fucked and everything's awful, but it's also not it'll work out. It's okay, what's the next problem, and I'll work on that. And I think that's what sets this movie apart. That's what really holds it above those other movies where it's like, I just got to believe. Like, no, he doesn't believe. He's just doing it.
He's working the problem, right?
Exactly. And I think that's phenomenal advice. I remember I most recently, I watched this movie maybe 2 months ago, like right before you asked me if we should do this episode. And that's what I took away from it. I was like, that's just genuinely great advice in life. Don't stress about the future. Work the problem that's in front of you now, and then work the next problem, and maybe eventually you'll run out of problems.
Eric, this film, the story takes place in the year, is it 2035 or 2045?
2035, I think, according to the book.
Okay, 2035. Sci-fi survival films predominantly take place in the future, right? Films like Gravity, Interstellar, Andrew, Children of Men, we covered that one. Book of Eli, even Ridley Scott's Alien. What makes The Martian, in your guys' opinion, what makes The Martian stand out among modern sci-fi survival films like those?
I think it's because, well, if you asked me that question about the book, the answer would be different. But the film, I think, stands out because visually, we have most of this technology today. In the film, we don't see any futuristic Blade Runner-esque type of equipment or props or vehicles. You know, they're driving around in, Hondas and Cadillac Escalades, and they're using rockets that, with a little artistic license, could be part of technology today. And I think that's what separates this from a lot of those other films with grandiose futuristic technology just to fill plot points. Whereas this, I think, is, even though it's set 10 years in the future from today, it's grounded in real technology. It's grounded in real science.
Eric, they're on Mars in this movie, working to colonize it, and it's 2035. Today, it's 2025. Do you see us on Mars in 10 years? Are we almost there?
Nope.
No.
Nope.
Andrew, you're shaking your head. Okay. Oh, how far away are we? Like, I mean, I get
30
it. We're not
years?
ready for Total Recall, but how many years, Eric?
30?
30? Okay.
I think that's a pretty safe estimate. Yeah, and I think the frustrating part is we could be. I think if when this book was written in 2011, I think it was not unrealistic for Weir to say that we'll be there by 2035. But it would have required a commitment to science and a unifying, vision that we just haven't had. And so, yeah, I think he's right. About 30 years from now would be a pretty safe bet.
And there's so many things about going to Mars that people don't understand. First of all, Mars does not have a liquid core, so it has no magnetic field. So you are going to get bombarded with solar radiation that will tear through your everything and destroy the DNA in your body. There's no way to shield the astronauts right now to our best ability for the 7-8 months it would take to get there or get back. We don't have a solid plan on how we would create fuel to refuel a vehicle to take us back home. There are a lot of obstacles, and it's going to cost money. And that, I think, is one of the biggest challenges right now for any mission to Mars, is it's going to cost money. Now, I think SpaceX has been working on this, but they're still 10 years away from a viable transport vehicle. So as much as I want to be optimistic, I don't know that I'll see somebody land on Mars in my lifetime. I would love to, but I don't see it happening.
Andrew used the word unification, though. And we even see that in this film where, Benedict Wong's character, he's got to reach out to his buddies in China, their space program. It would take, when we talk about, Andrew's talking about like, hey, it's going to pulling our resources. It's going to take more than NASA or SpaceX, right? It's going to take a unification with all the space programs, I would think, right?
Yeah, that's one of the limitations of SpaceX is when NASA was doing what it did in the 60s, it was bringing together Northrop Grumman. It was bringing together all these different contractors, and everybody was working on the same mission. SpaceX is trying to do it all itself. NASA is just woefully underfunded to do anything like we did back then. And there's other space agencies that are working on these problems too. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm excited about the Artemis missions back to the moon, but like, we're struggling to get back to the moon, and we did that a while ago. We did that 60 years ago. But it's because I don't think people realize the effort that went into it back then, and the amount of people and the amount of resources that had to go towards it. We don't have that directed towards anything except for maybe military spending today. So unless there's major changes, we're not going to get there.
I think there was polarization with the death of President Kennedy, and it was a different time back then. And I think that his statement that said we will land a man on the moon by the end of this decade, and then unfortunately he passed away, and I think that polarized the scientific community to make it happen.
All right, I've been looking forward to this question. I want to end with a fun question for the two of you, and considering not only both of you having this amazing knowledge when it comes to space, to NASA, to the program, and your deep knowledge when it comes to film. I don't know who's going to go first. Eric, you brought us here today, so I'm gonna give you honors.
Oh God!
I want you to think about all the space movies. Okay, and let's cut out the side, like I'm not talking about Star Wars and that. I'm talking like realism. Like I'll let you go as unrealistic as something like Alien or Aliens. Okay, because again, rooted in realism. My question to you: if you're getting a mission together and you're going up, I want you to name 2 movie characters from a space movie, an astronaut movie, if you will. I want you to name 2 characters that you're confident are going to get you back home. Who are you going up with on the mission? What 2 characters?
What are their roles? Are they scientists? Or are they captains, commanders, pilots? Just anybody.
You're the shuttle. Hey, you're the shuttle commander, so you tell me, man.
I got to pick 2.
Yeah, and they could be like, if you want like Fred Hayes from Apollo 13, who was a real person, totally cool. You can have him. Or if you want, someone off the Nostromo, you want Burke, you can have him. I'm just putting you on the spot here.
All right. So I'm
these great characters.
I got a space mission. I'm the shuttle commander. I get to pick 2 people I want
heading up.
Oh, you're going to love this one. I want Ellen Ripley, and I want I'm blanking on the name right now. Ben Affleck from Armageddon.
Okay. So, well, Andrew, he goes with Ellen J. Ripley, who has more than proven herself, and I'm like, okay, he's thinking this too. He's the shuttle. He's got a pilot. He's going with Ripley, and then he.
I have just lost. I'm looking at the look on Andrew's face right now. Any respect or credibility I had with him just went right out the fucking window.
Eric, here's the deal. I love that movie. I unapologetically love Armageddon.
Armageddon's awesome, by the way.
But why?
Okay, hold on. Can we break this down? I know we're going to go a little bit longer for this, but I got to ask. When I think of Armageddon, I think of Ben Affleck having a meltdown, going, "See what this button is? I don't know what it does. I don't know anything."
Hey, but he got him there. He did it though.
He got him there. He got the drill there. He saved him. Even Bruce Willis said, "I want you to know, AJ saved us."
Okay.
So look, you put me on the spot. I went with Ellen Ripley and I went with AJ, which kind of actually brings me back to a little meta theory I have. If I could recast a few roles in The Martian, and we can talk about it off camera if you want, but.
Yeah, that's. I don't think there's a. Andrew, you're welcome to try and give us a better answer, but and I'll respect whatever you give me. But man, Ellen and AJ.
It's been nice being on the podcast, Jeff. I'll just pack up my things and go home now.
That's not a bad answer. It honestly, like you even convinced us of why AJ grace under pressure. The guy figured it out. So fantastic.
Andrew's having a meltdown
Yeah.
right now.
No, I'm trying to think of my answer now because how do I follow that up?
I don't think you can. But listen, and you can if you want Ripley in your shuttle, totally cool. You both can have Ripley.
No, he's got Ripley because I think I got it. All right, so first we've been talking about The Martian. It's got some stellar astronauts in it. I'm gonna go Commander Lewis, Jessica Chastain. She's smart. She is a problem solver. She knows how to make the tough decisions. That's fantastic. And then we need a good pilot also. So I'm going to go with another Jessica Chastain movie, but I'm going to go with her dad, Cooper, from Interstellar.
Ooh.
We need a good pilot. He knows how to get it done. He's willing to sacrifice himself for the long game. That's what we need.
Oh, good choice too.
Plus, then I can reunite him with his daughter, and that would just make me feel better.
While Eric is putting a big smile on my face, you're giving us the compassion. You're giving us the thoughtfulness to it. So great answers, both of you. I was curious to see how fast you could think on your feet and who you'd be pulling, but you guys did not disappoint. So I definitely thank you for that. Eric, The Martian, 10 years old. I kind of feel like this is something you can watch if it's on TV and you're 10 minutes in or you got 10 minutes left. You're going to stop and watch it, right?
Yes, and every time I watch it, I see something I missed before, and I've probably seen this 24 times, but every time this is one of those films that every time you see it, you see something you missed before, and it gives you a little maybe better or different understanding. Like, oh, all right, I get that now, or wow, I never noticed that before.
Does the film hold up a decade later?
Absolutely.
All right. Andrew, your closing thoughts on The Martian.
It hits so many boxes for me. I love a movie that crosses genres, and this is a great survival movie. It's a great sci-fi movie. It's a great NASA movie. It's funny as hell. It's peak Ridley Scott. The cast is it's stacked. When you can lose a character like Benedict Wong as like a tertiary character, that's how much talent this movie brings. So it's just fantastic. Ridley Scott is not the most consistent of directors, in my opinion, but when he hits, man. And this is a home run.
Fantastic, Eric. I have got to thank you. Well, let me thank you for your patronage. You brought us here today, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
I hope you'll come back. I hope you'll. Yeah, I hope you'll come back because I'm already wondering like what's he gonna wear next? What's he gonna do? Like what's his? So
I hope it's linen.
He's 2 for 2. He's shown up. Let's think about this, Andrew. He has shown up on this podcast as Tom Cruise and as Matt Damon. So I don't know what Hollywood heartthrob he's got, in his bag of tricks next. But Eric, we look forward to it.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure. I enjoy being part of the conversation because sometimes I never know what you're going to throw at me.
Well, and thank you for your bravery too, because we've done a couple of these request episodes for our Patreon subscribers, and I think it's awesome to have someone on. It's one thing to say, "Hey, I want this movie." It's an entirely different situation when it's like, "Hey, I'll show up. I'll talk about why it's one of my favorites, or I'll talk about why I want to do this one." So I hope you will encourage some of our other Patreon members to step forward and say, "Hey, let me try out what Eric Dirt did, and let me get on there and talk it up with you." So
absolutely,
I have you to thank for that. Absolutely, Andrew. Thanksgiving is fast approaching. I know the next thing we got dropping on Patreon is one of our fun 10 for 2 episodes. Can we go ahead? Can we tell people what we're doing? Do you want to go ahead and drop it? Let us know. I don't know what movie.
Eagle-eyed observers might actually have been able to pick up. I got a hint in frame right here.
I saw it when we started.
You're welcome to spoil it for them if you'd like.
Patreon listeners, we are Andrew and I will be back for another one of our fun 10 for 2 episodes. We're gonna ask you for 10 minutes so that we can talk about 2 minutes of a very famous movie and a very impactful moment. And we'll be back next week with Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, because that has got to be one of the most definitive Thanksgiving movies out there. But Andrew, I'm not going to tell them which 2 minutes we want to talk about, because I am excited to talk about the 2 minutes that you have chosen for us. I'm wondering if people are going to get it. They're wondering right now, but we'll see. Come back next week for 10 minutes with Andrew Blakely, and we'll talk planes, trains, and automobiles. And for those of you out there, if you like what you hear, just keep subscribing. We'll see you next time.